it is easier to fool a people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Think about that. Because making makes sense to me. Because if there is one sentence that explains a lot of what is happening in Nigeria today, it may be that very sentence. Not because Nigerians are stupid anyway. No. Not because Nigerians don't care either. But because once a lie survives long enough, it stops looking like a lie. It starts looking like reality. And when a lie becomes reality, the people exposing the lie become the enemy. Have you noticed, as Nigerians, the people exposing problems often receive more attacks than the people creating them? And honestly, that should worry all of us. Now let's be honest, every one of us complains. We complain about corruption, we complain about insecurity, we complain about bad roads, bad schools, bad hospitals, bad governance. Everybody agrees there's a problem. But the moment somebody starts pointing directly at the problem, wahala starts. Real wahala. Suddenly it becomes, which tribe are you from? Which party do you support? Who sent you? Why are you talking? And before you know it, the conversation is dead, the issue disappears, the distraction takes over. It's almost as if we have become so used to dysfunction that anybody demanding better starts looking suspicious. Like the popular saying, the person who shall say fire, say house they burn. Now everybody they pursue first, not the fire, but the person shouting. And that's exactly how deception survives. Now, one thing history teaches us is this: people hardly reject lies immediately, but they often reject uncomfortable truth immediately. Because truth demands change, truth demands responsibility, truth demands self-examination, and many people would rather protect their comfort than confront reality. That is why every generation attacks some of the people trying to challenge the system. Not necessarily because those people are always right. No human being is. But because they force uncomfortable conversations. And uncomfortable conversations make people nervous. And especially when entire identities of the people have been built around comfortable lies. Now take VeryDarkMan, for example. Love him or hate him, agree with him or disagree with him. That's not even the point. The point is what happens whenever he speaks. Notice how often attention shifts away from the issue and now shifts onto him. Instead of discussing the problem, people start discussing the messenger. Instead of discussing injustice, they attack the person talking about it. Instead of discussing suffering, they question motives. And recently, we have seen situations where people become angry at those speaking about problems that affect ordinary Nigerians. Every one of us. Think about that. People suffering from a problem, attacking someone for speaking about a problem. That should make all of us pause. Because when a society becomes more offended by criticism than by injustice, something is deeply and fundamentally wrong. Now forget politics, just for a moment. Forget parties, forget campaigns, forget elections. Just look at the election. Look at what happened around Peter. Millions of Nigerians saw hope. Millions of others saw something completely different. Why? Because after decades of disappointment, many Nigerians stopped believing change was possible. And when people stop believing change is possible, hope becomes controversial. Some embrace it, others attack it. Not because they have fully examined it, but because disappointment has become more familiar. And familiar things often feel safer than certain possibilities. Now let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. Nnamdi Kanu. The moment his name is mentioned, emotions rise, opinions harden, arguments begin. But let's step back a little bit, because this is not really about one man, it's about a pattern. History is filled with people whose warnings were ignored until reality caught up. That doesn't mean everyone is correct, and it doesn't mean every critic becomes a prophet. But it does mean societies often dismiss uncomfortable concerns long before they understand them. The real question is not really whether you agree with every statement. The real question is what happens when a society stops listening entirely. Because when legitimate concerns are ignored for too long, those concerns rarely disappear. They grow, and eventually, reality forces the conversation anyway. You see, and politics is not the only place this happens. Religion can become vulnerable too. Not faith, not God, not spirituality. Human beings. We. Because once questioning becomes forbidden, deception becomes easier. When loyalty becomes more important than truth, deception becomes easier. When charisma becomes more important than accountability, deception becomes easier. The easiest person to deceive is not the ignorant person. It is the desperate person. The person looking for hope, the person looking for answers, the person looking for a miracle. And sadly, some people know exactly how to exploit that desperation. Trust me. But here's the hardest truth of all. The greatest victim of deception is not the person who was lied to. It is the person who starts defending the lie. Because once your identity becomes so attached to a lie, the truth feels like an insult. The truth feels personal. The truth feels like an attack. And that is why people defend politicians who repeatedly disappoint them. That is why people defend religious leaders who exploit them. That is why people attack whistleblowers. That is why people attack reformers. That is why people attack activists. Not because truth is weak, but because admitting you have been fooled hurts. And sometimes it hurts more than the deception itself. Which brings me back to my opening statement. It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Maybe Nigeria's biggest battle is not corruption. Maybe it's not even poverty. Maybe it's not even bad leadership. Maybe the real battle is between comfort and truth. Because comfort demands nothing from us. Truth demands everything. And every generation will decide which one it will follow. Maybe Nigeria doesn't have shortage of truth. Maybe Nigeria has shortage of people that are willing to hear it. And if the people trying to wake you up always look like the enemy, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who taught you who the enemy was?